our last lecture from this fundamentals course. So the topic of Nibbāna. So I explained the last part actually about the great Nibbāna. But when you go into the Buddhist literature, we find 7 types of Nibbāna explained in the teachings. One is considered as a Micchāditthi Nibbāna, which is not, it is advocated by the monks, samanas who held into wrong views. You can find this in the Brahmajala Sutta. It is 5-fold. So if you go to 17.2, Micchāditthi Nibbāna is the liberation advocated by those who had wrong views. It is 5-fold. Quenching the thirst of sensual desires by gratifying the senses. So some would say this is the real liberation that a being could attain by satisfying your senses. Then one is liberated. That is the Nibbāna. This was advocated especially by a Magandhya, not the female, Magandhya Brahmin. Magandhya, not the long A, short A. You can see this in Majjhima Nikaya. He had an argument with the Buddha. So he was one of the advocates of this doctrine. Then the first jhana, which is attained by abandoning the sensual objects, desires and hindrances, and also which is together with vitakka, vichara, piti, sukha and ekagrata. The first jhana itself, if one attains the first jhana and dwells in it, some would say it is the real happiness. This is an actual happiness. But if someone says it is the liberation, this is a fault. That is why Buddha considered it as a Micchāditthika Nibbāna. But it doesn't mean that it is not a bliss. Right? So for that, after explaining this, we'll come to the various types of happiness. Right? Then second jhana is also considered as a bliss, Nibbāna, third jhana and fourth jhana. Right? So they were all considered as a Micchāditthika Nibbāna, which are not correct explanations about Nibbāna according to the Buddha's teaching. Because the word Nibbāna, this is what it is important. Nibbāna means cessation, extinguishing of the suffering that is about to come. So now Nibbāna is also explained as a happiness. So now happiness is to be explained as twofold. What is the word for Pali word we use for happiness? Sukha. So sukha is twofold. Vedayita sukha, avedayita sukha. Vedayita sukha means the sukha vedana. Right? Sukha vedana that you experience, which arises in your mind. Right? Sukha vedana. Avedayita sukha is not the sukha vedana. It is an unconditioned state. Right? It is an unconditioned state. It is the freedom or liberation from the suffering which is possible to arise or that would have arisen, that would have encountered. Right? It is the liberation. So we have to understand what is the difference of this Vedayita Sukha and Avedayita Sukha. So for instance, this Avedayita Sukha is an unconditioned state. There are various unconditioned states explained in the Buddhist doctrine. Normally we talk about one unconditioned state, which is the freedom from all sorts of suffering if you attain it. We call it the Nibbāna. So when we say Nibbāna sa paccaya hotu, we are aiming towards the ultimate Avedayita Sukha, the highest Avedayita Sukha. But it doesn't mean it is the only unconditioned state. Sometimes you may see this as something against the teachings, but don't worry about that. The word Nibbāna has been used in several places. I'll prove it with facts. So keep in mind, the first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana were explained as Micchāditthika Nibbāna. Right? It is explained as Micchāditthika. It doesn't mean the jhana is not looked down upon. If someone says jhana is the liberation, that is considered as a long thing. Right? Otherwise, you may come into understanding, if someone is saying the first jhana, he is in the Miccādittika Nibbāna. No. Miccādittika Nibbāna means, if someone says it is a liberation, that saying, that liberation is a wrong idea. Right? That doesn't mean that jhana is not good. So, and also it doesn't mean that when you gratify your senses, it is a big fault. It is something that a lay person, as a lay, for example, lady devotees have to do. And sometimes monks also have to do gratify their senses, like for example, when they have certain problems. So to a certain limit. So gratifying it doesn't mean that. So what we mention is, if someone says this is a liberation, then that is a wrong advocation. Right? So Avedayita Sukha means the things that exist unconditionally. So we explained now in the previous lecture about a state that exists without independent of Nama Rupa process, and we call it the Nibbāna. So I'll give another example. Now there is a constant example, right? This doesn't just say the unconditioned or conditioned. It's just an example. There is constant sound appearing in the space. When the sound stops, the silence appears. If I ask you a question, did the silence start when the sound stopped, or silence was there, it was covered because of the sound? Silence was the original state, for example. Right? Just an example I am giving. Don't go into deeply analyze this. So it's like this. Nibbana exists. Right? It is covered to us because of this Nama Rupa process, especially because of the ignorance. So likewise, there are certain states which are unconscious states. So when I say about the Avedayita Sukha, another way is a liberation. Vimukti. Liberation means, right? Liberation means freedom from a suffering that is going to happen. Right? That is going to happen. That would have happened. Right? That would have happened. But it exists despite the suffering. Right? It exists despite the suffering. So there are few types of this type of Nibbānas explained in the Buddhist doctrine. If you remember, I mentioned when the Nama Rupa process is existing, there are certain latent defilements. Anusaya, Avidya, Anusaya, Tanha, that has the potency to arise. The potency was there. Right? I would have given a separate, I was planning to give a separate lecture on these, then it would be more clear to understand when we go step by step as we did for Karma. But unfortunately I was unable to give a lecture on these two. This means Anusaya level of defilements. Because there are various levels how we explain the Anusaya. So anyway, so when we know about the Pahana, and the topic of Pahana we discussed, you arouse, you bring certain unwholesome qualities, and we suppress certain defilements. This is called Tadanga Pahana. Right? So you bring one type of kusala, wholesome deed. We arise a wholesome deed, a kusala, I would call it K. So then this avidya and tanha is affected by this kusala. For example, if you bring asubha meditation into your mind, the lobha will be, lust will be affected. If you bring metta, the dosa will be affected. Right? So when this is thus suppressed, when by the kusala, when the avidya and tanha is thus suppressed, if this practice was not brought, any time these defilements would have arisen. We are not freed from them. Not freed from that means we have the potency to come, it would have arisen all the time. It is like a tree with a certain kind of a gum. It's just a matter of fact, you hit it, the gum will come out. So when these defilements are not fully suppressed, when we pay unwise attention to a certain object, they would quickly arise. They would quickly come out. So likewise, if we have suppressed them, the possibility of these defilements arising is getting lower and lower. If we, for example, if you attain to a jhana, it's very less that these defilements are coming up. It's very less that these defilements are coming up. So likewise, when you suppress these defilements, we become free from the arising of these defilements. These non-arisen defilements are not going to happen for a certain while as long as we maintain our good quality. For example, you observe a certain sila, as if you observe it for 5 years, not killing animals, the anger of killing would not arise in you because you have fully suppressed, you have determined to it, you are putting lots of effort to keep it. So likewise, we have suppressed it. So unlike the other person, normally a person, when a mosquito lies, they just crush it. But a person who has determined not to kill, such thoughts would not arise. After some time, he may just chase away, but even a killing thought may not arise in him. So the difference is, he has suppressed the defilements. So as long as you have suppressed these defilements, your mind becomes freed from the suffering of killing. Your mind becomes free from the suffering of killing. So why this has happened? Because the defilements normally are in a very closer stage to our surface of the mind. If I'm giving explain it in another way. We are very closer. We are very prone to do such bad things. But when we suppress it in terms of sila, what happens? The amount of defilements, the possibility of such defilements coming, affecting our mind is getting lesser and lesser. So we are free from that defilements as long as we maintain this sila. So this non-arising of these defilements, which are suppressed due to our wholesome qualities, is considered as a Nibbāna. This Nibbāna is an unconditioned state. In the Salleka Sutta, Buddha mentioned this Nibbāna as Paranibbāna. This Paranibbāna doesn't mean the last attainment of an Arahant. He mentions a normal person suppresses his defilements, suppresses his defilements to kill and so forth by bringing up determinations, certain silas. His defilements will be suppressed. So when these defilements are suppressed, his mind stays in a certain, a certain state which is free from this suffering. So this, why we call it a freedom of suffering? Because it was about to come. So in our tradition, we consider this state which is freed from these sufferings as an unconditioned state. So that is we call it Tadanga Nibbāna. And then, for example, if you suppress it in a very higher level by a jhana, the possibility of defilements coming up is very less, is further suppressed. It's called Vikambita Anusaya. So when the Anusaya is thus suppressed by Vipassana and Jhana, the possibility of these defilements coming up is very less. Our mind is experiencing another huge bliss, which is of freedom from the tormenting defilements in our mind. It's a very important point. How is it an ultimate state? That is a question that you can ask. Is it an ultimate state? Yes, it is an ultimate state. That is the ultimate state that we enjoy. When you keep on, for example, think that you maintain a certain virtue for a longer period without letting the defilements to come up, your mind will start to enjoy a huge comfort. Your mind will be soaked in a certain comfort. This comfort that you feel you cannot attain it without suppressing the defilements. This is the attainment of these Nibbānas. So this, when you suppress the defilements by means of jhanas, your mind comes to a state called Vikambana Nibbāna. So these Nibbānas are mind comes into these states and gets out of these states. They are not going to permanently remain in the state. It's like this. For example, if I say a different example, so this kind of, I'm talking about the Nibbānas related to the mind in the first. That is Tadanga Nibbāna and Vikambana Nibbāna. Freedom from suffering. For example, if you remember, when defilements are permanently cut off, we are freed from them permanently. That is called the ultimate Nibbāna. Nibbāna was the freedom from the potential non-arising of the kilesas that would have arisen. That is the Nibbāna. Now we are taking it further, few steps back. We say permanently release freedom from kilesas is the Nibbāna. Then temporary but with huge suppression. So this, when you suppress certain defilements with jhana, as long as you don't lose the jhana, you are experiencing the freedom from defilements. This freedom will be experienced throughout the entire life in the Brahma world. In the Brahma world, the Nivarnas are not going to happen. So a Brahma is experiencing a Vikambana Nibbāna throughout his entire life. Right? Because he is not tormented by suffering. So if they are completely removed, we call it Nibbāna, the ultimate Nibbāna. If they are suppressed and they are not temporarily coming out, still it is a liberation because we are not tormented by the suffering of the defilements. If we suppress to a certain level by observing Sila, at that moment also we don't get this suffering as long as we don't break the Sila. Right? So our mind is freed from those sufferings. So the next point I want to emphasize is this freedom is a Avedaita Sukha. What does I mean by Avedaita Sukha? This is the most important point. The freedom from defilements temporary, freedom from defilements permanently, freedom from defilements through suppression, all these three, the one I explained in the previous lecture, I'll be explaining them now. When we come to the chart, we'll go one by one. I'm giving an overall idea what is this Avedaita Sukha is. Now think, someone has observed the Sila for 40 years, for example. He has not killed any animal for 40 years, if you think. Throughout the entire 40 years, this dosa, anger of killing, has not come into his mind. He has not experienced this tormenting kilesa. Right? He has not experienced this tormenting kilesa. So now, his mind is free from the suffering. That would have arisen, the potential was there. Right? Because of his suppression, he is freed from that. So now, throughout the entire 40 years, it doesn't mean that he is not only thinking about this freedom, he is doing all the other activities. Now if I ask a question, now you have to think about this. While he is doing something else, he is eating some food. At that moment, now from the moment he is suppressed, he practiced for 40 years, defilements have not arisen in him, he has not encountered the suffering of killing within himself, the defilements. So while he is eating, he is not thinking about his sila, about his virtue. At that moment, is his mind devoid from that happiness, or is this mind, even while eating, is it connected with that liberation from the defilements? It is connected. Whether you think about it or not, your mind is free from that particular defilement. I'm not talking about other defilements. I'm not talking about the attachment to the taste. His mind is free from that defilements of killing. So whether you think about it or not, that is the point. Whether you think about it or not, when you attain a certain state, that is the difference of a state. Your mind is in that state. That is called Avedaita Sukha. Vedaita Sukha means you watch a movie and you enjoy it. You listen to a song and you enjoy it. Only when that object is there, you encounter this happiness. You cannot say, while I am not listening to the song, I am having that same enjoyment. No. Vedaita Sukha means it deals with the object. It's this happy feeling. Avedaita Sukha means it is getting rid of certain sufferings. So when you get rid of certain suffering, when you have suppressed the causes of suffering, your mind is freed from that suffering as long as it comes up, that particular suffering. So when a person has attained the jhana and suppressed the defilements, even while he is doing some other work, because his mind is freed from nivaranas, hindrances, he is enjoying this Nibbāna of getting free from those sufferings. So likewise, this Avaidayita Sukha means is a liberation. So whether you think about it or not, we are freed from that suffering. So when we talk about these Avaidayita Sukha, we are talking about getting freed from certain sufferings that would have come. Right? So we are going to talk about the Tadanga Nibbāna, suppressing defilements by certain good qualities, and that freedom from these defilements, suppressing defilements by jhanas, and getting freed from defilements for a very suppressing defilements by jhana in a very higher level, and then we are getting mind is freed from defilements in a huge way. So it's a very high bliss. And in the last Nibbāna, completely eradicating, the mind is entirely free from this suffering. That is the ultimate Nibbāna that we were talking, right? So all these cases, getting rid of the suffering that would have come. That is the underlying point. Now we come into another type of suffering. Think about the karma. We all have accumulated karma in our samsara that can take us to woeful realms many times. We have all accumulated such karmas, right? So now we are, in the past life when we were going to die, we all had that possibility in ourselves to be born in woeful realms. So when we say we are born in a human realm, what does it mean? Our karma, a good karma came forth, according to Buddhist teachings, a good karma came forth, overcoming all the bad karmas, and we were given a human birth while we are having the possibility to be born in woeful realms. So it's like this. When the defilements were there, they had the possibility to arise. We suppress them by a certain good means, and our mind is free from the suffering as long as we maintain these good qualities like silas. So likewise, in the moment of death, a good karma came, so the abundance of akusala that we have, which can lead to woeful realms, were held back for a certain time, and we were given a good human birth. As long as we remain in the human life, we are not going to encounter the suffering of the woeful realm, which was possible if the unwholesome karmas were given the opportunity at the death. Right? So we all have the possibility of encountering suffering in the woeful realms as Putujanas. So while being so, if a wholesome karma has taken the opportunity, suppressing the causes for the suffering, and taken the opportunity and given a human birth, means as throughout our entire human life, we are in a certain Nibbāna. This is called Sammuti Nibbāna. Right? So it's like this. For example, just for a simile, we normally say, I have said this many times, for simile, we say human life is lots of problems. We have sickness, we have money, some people have money problems, they have job problems, working load, family problems. So how do you think according to Buddhist teachings? You would go take these all problems and tell this to a peta. What would happen? A peta who is in immense of suffering, he would say, what are you talking? The suffering you are encountering is, I haven't eaten a lump of rice or water for thousands of years, and you are telling a family problem is a huge problem for me. I am wishing to become a human, then you are telling the human life is a suffering. Right? So the thing is, we all have the problems, we all have the potentials to be born in the woeful realms. So when we are born as human beings, we are free from that suffering. So this is one point, that this is called an ultimate state. Why? According to the Buddhist teaching, We all have the possibility to be born in such woeful realms, and we are free from that, but it is still the end of this life. We cannot guarantee. At the next life, if we get the unwholesome karma, if we do bad things and get unwholesome karma, we will be put into that woeful state. So because of, suppressing the causes, that is the theory behind this. Avedita Sukha means a state you attain. That is an important point. Avedita Sukha means a state you attain by either suppressing, abandoning, eradicating the causes for suffering. And that state is the freedom from that suffering, either temporary or permanently. Right? Either temporary and permanently. So Nibbāna is a state, if you attain it, it's no comeback. Right? It's a permanent liberation from the suffering. But other liberations, like Sammuti Nibbāna, attaining a human life, attaining this, for example, another example is the health. Our body is a place where all sort of sickness can come up. Right? If you don't eat for 4-5 days, it will go into, break down. So if we maintain a good health habits, we are suppressing the potentials that can cause suffering at any time. So one time a doctor has mentioned that all the humans, the body is made like we surely have to have a cancer. Our body is such a thing. The main thing is most of the people die before the cancer comes. Right? So it's like our body is structured in such a way that everyone should get a cancer one day or another. The thing is, we die before the cancer comes. So it means our body is such a thing that is prone to sickness anytime. I think you can understand this, right? It's not a simple, it's not a new thing. So when we maintain the health means, be either because of your past karmas or either because of your good health habits, good way of behavior, keeping your body. So you maintain health means you are free from the suffering of sickness. So this is called a liberation. So this Sammuti Nibbāna is various. It is not only attained by personally. For example, if there is a war in a certain country, always we have the fears, torments and everything. If we suppress this war, stop this war, then we would be freed from these type of fears. So that is why we call that we enjoy that freedom. People consider this as a wonderful thing. So likewise, healthiness, freedom from fears, freedom from sorrows, freedom from epidemics, that all we manage properly. These are considered as Sammuti Nibbāna. How do we know it as ultimate state? Think how you value it. How you value the health. Because if it is just a concept, we are not going to value it. So it is a wonderful thing. It is a wonderful state. It's like our mind is freed from such suffering states. For example, if I talk about monks and nuns, sometimes monks and nuns, we call the lay life is full of suffering. So sometimes monks and nuns get fed of this nun life, and sometimes they tend to disrobe, for example. But that is the reason is sometimes we are not happy, we are not getting the intended goals, we are not getting the intended jhanas or maggapalas, or we cannot study, something like that. But if you take about the complete two different states, when you come into a monk or nun life, the liberation you get from the suffering of the lay life is always there. The thing is, whether what point I want to emphasize, if you have a healthy body, if your health is good, whether you focus it or not, whether you always consider it or not, are we healthy or not? We are healthy. Even you don't consider means we have a healthy body. We are not always thinking I'm healthy, right? And we are doing other things. So while we are doing something else, while we are not thinking about our health, is our body and mind, body is in the state of health or not? It is in the state of healthiness. So Avedita Sukha means whether you consider it about or not, whether monk is worrying, for example, is worrying of something else, but his liberation that he has attained by becoming a monk, he doesn't lose it. A person observes, liberation means liberation from the suffering of the lay life. If someone attains a sila, observes a sila and maintains it while he is doing some other work, maybe he has a defilement in the mind at that time, it doesn't mean that he is free from that sila. Sila means the liberation he got from those kilesas that he suppressed, that liberation is still in him. So this Avedayita Sukha means a state that your mind, body attains. Whether you consider about it or not, whether you are aware about it or not, it doesn't matter. Whether we, for example, we are worrying. Sometimes people are worrying about their problems. But if I ask a question, even while he is worrying about his problems, is he freed from at that moment, is he freed from the suffering of woeful realms or not? As long as he remains a human, he is free from the woeful suffering of the woeful realms. Because he's not going to encounter the suffering of a Peta. Even though his mind is worried because of some other reasons, he is freed from the suffering of the woeful realm. So Avedayita Sukha means it's not something that you need to always think about it. It's not something that you know to always to enjoy. It's always there when you attain it. Whether you consider it about or not, you have attained Avedayita Sukha. Right? You have attained Avedayita Sukha. So that is why, for example, sometimes we consider Asanya Satta, for example. We consider it as like an empty state. We consider it, what is the use of this Asanya Satta, for example. You go into there and after 500 years, the no chitta was there. You just wake up, it's a new birth. You don't remember anything what happened. Right? We feel it like it's like sleeping, right? We say, what is the happiness of this? This happiness of Asanya Satta should be known as Avedayita Sukha. What is it? If the mind is there, lots of suffering. You know the suffering of mind, right? Mind is there, lots of suffering and lots of taking objects. It's constantly working. Is a huge tiring thing. The working of mind. If you keep on thinking, you find that it's a huge thing, and all the suffering is because of this mind. So think, he suppressed this chitta for 500 years. So think about the healthiness what I was talking. You are healthy for 100 years. Are you always thinking that I am healthy? No. But when you are doing some other work, are you enjoying, the body is in the state of health or not? It is in the health of health. Whether you consider it about or not, as long as a sickness arises, you are a healthy person. Whether you think about or consider about it or not doesn't matter. Consider means you are not thinking about that I am healthy always. You are not enjoying it. You are sometimes worrying about your parents or something else, but still you are in the healthiness. So likewise, in Asanya Satta, the mind doesn't appear, so you don't remember, but the freedom from the mind is still there. The freedom from the mind is still there. Why we don't feel it as a freedom? Because we think Sukha, always we need to experience. Happiness, if we think the happiness should be experienced, we are evaluating the level of happiness based on Vedayita Sukha. Avedayita Sukha means a state freed from certain sufferings. After your mind and body has attained this state, whether you think about it or not, your mind and body is in that state. You are free from that suffering. That is called Avedayita Sukha. That is why Asanya Satta is a great bliss, even though we don't remember it. So, in this manner, so Avedayita Sukha, I'll come back to the handout. I hope you got the point. So, Avedayita Sukha means the state you attain by suppressing the causes of suffering. That is a non-arising state of certain suffering. So if you go to 17.3, Sammuti Nibbāna is a state of being free from suffering, such as sickness, fears, sorrows, dangers, danger of enemies, wars and so on. Our body is a birthplace for various types of sickness. If we can maintain healthiness, this is considered as a liberation. When the father of Matta Kundali got rid of the sorrow of repenting upon his child, he mentioned that that he became appeased from mental suffering. He became appeased. So what he referred was to the Sammuti Nibbana. He mentioned Nibbuto, right? Kisa Gautami, a relative of Bodhisattva, having seen the beauty of the Bodhisattva, uttered the following verses: Nibbuta nuna samata, Nibbuto nuna sopito pita, Nibbuta nuna savanari, yassayang idisopati. A mother who has this sort of a son, a father who has this sort of a son, a wife who has this sort of a husband are indeed appeased. They are free from lots of problems. So what he was telling is that they are free from lots of problems that otherwise because of a bad person. Here in the word Nibbuta refers to the Sammuti Nibbana of being freed from all worries. This is a great relief for the beings who had not attained the great Nibbana, which is the freedom from all sorts of sufferings forever. So as long as we go into the attain the full Nibbana, we should be consider about attaining this Sammuti Nibbana. But this Sammuti Nibbana can be attained in various ways. It doesn't need to be attained in a wholesome way. Like you crush one kind of do a war and crush the enemies, then your country become appeased. So the Sammuti Nibbana is not necessary to be attained by wholesome means. In Bodhisattva, in Jatakas, I think you have seen some lives. His Jataka was bringing the Sammuti Nibbana to his relatives, to his countrymen, to his clan. So in that cases, he killed the other beings. Killing is an unwholesome thing. So what he did was, he was bringing the Sammuti Nibbana, like this appeasement, to other generations. So Sammuti Nibbana is a great relief, but it can be attained by good means and bad means, both. Right? So Tadanga Nibbana should be understood in the following manner. There are various wholesome qualities that are opposite of various unwholesome qualities. Abandoning of certain unwholesome qualities by opposing wholesome qualities is called Tadanga Pahana. We discussed about this. Non-arising of thus abandoned unwholesome qualities for a temporal time, for a certain time, is called Tadanga Nibbana. This liberation is termed with the word Parinibbana in the Salleka Sutta of Majjhima Nikaya, which was uttered to Venerable Chunda. In the Sutta, Tadanga Nibbana was explained in 44 ways, as the unwholesome qualities are various and countless. If explained as the non-arising of those particular countless unwholesome qualities, this state of liberation can be explained in countless ways. However, Tadanga Nibbana is an unconditioned state which has the characteristic of Santi Lakkana, peace. When compared to Sammuti Nibbana, Tadanga Nibbana is far superior than the prior. It is far superior because it is something you experience in your mind, right? It is like appeasement from defilements. According to Tadanga Nibbana Sutta of Anguttara Nikaya, even the non-arising of hindrances after attaining the first jhana, non-arising of respective jhana factors while abandoning in higher jhanas, are also called and the last line you have to, it's a mistake. Non-arising of Vedana and Sanya while please cut that line. Non-arising of Vedana and Sanya while abiding Nirodha Samapatti, please cut it. Also can also be termed as Tadanga Nibbana. Right? Nirodha Samapatti is not a Tadanga. I think I made a mistake in the Pahana lecture also. I made it Tadanga, Nirodha Samapatti and all these as Tadanga and Vikambana Pahana. It was a mistake. It's only Jhana and wholesome Lokiya Kusala can do this Tadanga Pahana. Nirodha Samapatti is considered as Samucheda Pahana and Samucheda Nibbana. Samucheda Nibbana actually. Not Pahana. Non-arising of certain defilements after they are temporarily abandoned by respective insight wisdoms is also called Tadanga Nibbana. Right? So it is equal when we talk about Tadanga Pahana. When you do the Tadanga Pahana, the non-arising of thus abandoned defilement is called Tadanga Nibbana. Vikambana Nibbana is the non-arising of certain mentalities that are being suppressed by Mahangata Dhammas. The non-arising of hindrances which are suppressed by the first jhana, and the non-arising of respective jhana factors while abandoning in higher jhanas which are suppressed by higher jhanas. This unconditioned state is referred in the Anguttara Nikaya Navaka Nipata with the following names: Sandittika Nibbana, Nibbana, Tadanga Nibbana, Dittadhamma Nibbana, Khema, Amata, Abhaya, Passadhi, Nirodha. Right? In the Anguttara Nikaya you find these kind of terminologies used to them. So if you ask, now I would like to say why I would say this is not the jhana I am talking. This is the non-arising of the defilements suppressed by the jhana. I have to distinguish this very clearly. I am not talking about the jhana. Why? If you go to the previous page, Miccha Dittika Nibbana. So what are the 5 types of Miccha Dittika Nibbanas? That is, gratifying the senses. First jhana, second, third, fourth jhana. So they are Miccha Dittika Nibbana. But in Anguttara Nikaya, Venerable Ananda explained these as Nibbana. They are not Miccha Dittika Nibbana. What does it mean? This is the non-arising of defilements. Right? These are non-arising of defilements by coming into jhanas. Right? These are non-arising of defilements coming into after you attain a jhana. These are 2 things. When you attain a jhana, jhana is a chitta, conditioned thing. Right? So in jhana you focus on ultimate, which counter sign, and you experience certain bliss. When you attain the jhana, you have suppressed the defilements. So they are not arising any further. So this non-arising is what I call as the Nibbana here. Right? So that is why it is different from Miccha Dittika Nibbana. Then Patipassati Nibbana, this is very important. Patipassati Nibbana is the Arahatta Phala-chitta. This is not an unconditioned state. This is a conditioned state. This is also called Nibbana. But this Nibbana is not the Nibbana that we are aspiring to. We are aspiring to the unconditioned state. So this Nibbana is Sankata. It is so called. Why Arahatta Phala-chitta is called Nibbana? It is so called since it arises after all kilesas have been permanently eliminated. While explaining a verse found in Sutta Nipata, the Nettipakarana gave the following statement. Ayam Saupadisesa Nibbana Dhatu. Saeva Saupadisesa Nibbana Dhatu Vijja. This is the Saupadisesa Nibbana Dhatu. That Saupadisesa Nibbana Dhatu is wisdom as the prominent factor. Then its commentary clearly clarifies as Saupadisesa Nibbana Dhatu Ti Arahatta Phalam Adipeta. Here Saupadisesa Nibbana Dhatu means the fruition of Arahatta Phala. In the Mahamangala Sutta, Buddha referred to attainment of reflection, attainment or reflection of Arahatta Phala, with the phrase Nibbāna Satchikiriya. You remember in the verse in the Mahamangala Sutta, Tapocha Brahmacharyancha, Ariya Satchana Dasana, Nibbāna Satchikiriyacha, Etang Mangalamutam. Right? So in the Ariya Satchana Dasanam means understanding or attaining the 4 noble truths. Right? So the great Nibbana we were talking is found in the 4 noble truths. Right? So when you say attaining the 4 noble truths, understanding the 4 noble truths, so at that moment the great Nibbana is mentioned, the unconditioned state which we called in the first lecture. So Nibbana Satchikiriya here means attainment of Phala-chitta. So I have given you the references. In the commentary literature, we clearly says here Nibbana means the Arahatta Phala. Right, Arahatta Phala. Then we come into the Samucceda Nibbana and Nissarana Nibbana are identical in terms of ultimate realities. It is the sum and bonum of Buddhist teachings, that is the ultimate goal. In brief, Samucceda Nibbana can be termed as the non-arising of defilements that are eradicated by 4 supramundane paths. You remember we mentioned non-arising of defilement and a non-arising of the suffering. Right? I mentioned 2. So now non-arising of defilements have been mentioned with a special term, Samucceda Nibbana. And Nissarana Nibbana is the non-arising of defilements that are eradicated by 4 supramundane paths and the non-arising of aggregates due to the eradication of their causes. That is to say defilements. So we mentioned non-arising of defilements, non-arising of suffering, aggregates, Samucceda Nibbana specifically refers to the non-arising of defilements. Nissarana Nibbana refers to both non-arising of defilements and non-arising of the suffering. Both. Suffering. So then, Samucceda Nibbana is the non-arising of freedom from defilements that are eradicated by 4 supramundane paths, according to the Tissa Brahma Sutta of Anguttara Nikaya. It is sevenfold, according to the 7 types of noble persons. You remember the 7 types of nobles? You studied in BA/B normally. There are 7 types of nobles. They are you will find them. They are normally Kaya Sakti. We call Saddhanusari, Dhammanusari, Kaya Sakti, Dittipatta, Saddha Vimutta, and Panya Vimutta and Vato Bhaga Vimutta. The 7 nobles. We are not talking about the 7, not the 8 Aryas. It's a different way of explaining, right? Buddha mentioned them in several suttas. So, based on the because of eradication of defilements, based on these 7 nobles, there is a discussion going with among the Venerable Mahamoggallana and a Brahma called Tissa. And Buddha also in the end added something in the sutta. However, it is 7-fold according to 7 types of noble birth. However, it is also mainly 2-fold, as Sopadi says Samucceda Nibbana and Anupadi says Samucceda Nibbana. What does it mean? Among these 7 nobles, 2 are Arahants, 5 are lower nobles. So Arahants eradicate all the defilements. So their liberation from defilement is called Anupadisesa Samucceda Nibbana. They don't have any remnant kilesas. They don't have remnant defilements. But the lower nobles, the 5 lower nobles, their Samucceda Nibbana is called Sopadisesa. There is some remnant kilesa remaining. Right? Their remnant is something is there. So therefore, mainly it is Anupadisesa, Sopadisesa, Anupadisesa. It's 5. Sopadisesa is 5-fold. Sopadisesa Samucceda Nibbana attained by Kaya Sakti noble, Dittipatti noble person, Saddha Vimutta, Dhammanusari, and Saddhanusari. Right? Saddhanusari was explained by the Buddha in the end. Then the Anupadisesa Samucceda Nibbana, state of non-arising of defilements attained by Arahants. According to the same sutta, Anupadisesa Nibbana is again 2-fold as follows. Anupadisesa Samucceda Nibbana attained by Ubato Bhaga Vimutta noble person, and Anupadisesa Samucceda Nibbana attained by a Panya Vimutta noble person. Right? So Nissarana Nibbana is the freedom from, I mentioned, is identical with the Samucceda Nibbana. It is the freedom from the defilements, non-arising of the defilements that were to arise, and also the non-arising of suffering that were to arise. Samucceda Nibbana only focus on the non-arising of defilements. Nissarana Nibbana focus on both non-arising of defilements and the non-arising of the suffering. Right? So these are the 7 ways that we find in our literature about the Nibbana. So the main purpose, so among them, if you go back to the first page, I have given Micchadittika Nibbana is nothing for us to concern, because it is not concerned as within our literature. So out of the last 6, right, you can see now number 6, Patipassati Nibbana is the Sankata. It is conditioned. This is the Palachitta. Sometimes we tend to believe that Palachitta is the Nibbana. No, Palachitta is a Nibbana, sort of a Nibbana, but it is not the ultimate Nibbana. So ultimate Nibbana is the Asankata Nibbana. So altogether there are 5 Asankata Nibbanas. What are those? Sammuti Nibbana is Asankata, Tadanga Nibbana is Asankata, Vikambana Nibbana is Asankata, Samucceda Nibbana is Asankata, Nissarana Nibbana is Asankata. Right? These are the 5. So there are 5 types of Asankata, unconditioned Nibbana. These 5 are unconditioned. Micchadittika Nibbana, we don't need to worry about that, right? So number 2, 3, 4, 5 and 7 are unconditioned. Number 6 is conditioned, right? Number 6 is conditioned. So this Patipassati Nibbana is equal to Arahatta Phala, right? Arahatta phala. So then the Nibbana that we aspire, that we wish for, like Nibbāna sapaccyo hotu, right, is the number 5 and number 7. Number 5 and number 7 are identical. That is the permanent freedom from defilement, samucceda Nibbāna, right? I mentioned that. Nisarana Nibbāna is the permanent freedom from the defilements and also the permanent freedom from the suffering that would have encountered otherwise, right? So if you go to the fundamental 17.11, 17.11, I have mentioned Samucceda Nibbāna and the Nisarana Nibbāna are identical in terms of ultimate realities. It is just a way. Now, if I draw the diagram, if you remember, this is the Nama-Rupa process. What is about to happen? This is the death. This is the future now. So then we have defilement. So I mentioned they are possible to arise. So when you cut off the defilements, they are not going to happen, and this is also not going to happen. So Samucceda Nibbāna only focuses here, non-arising of the defilements. Nisarana Nibbāna focuses on both, non-arising of defilements and the non-arising of the aggregates. That is the difference, right? So in terms of this non-arising, permanently non-arising, it's a same Nibbāna. So the great Nibbāna, what I call Maha Nibbāna Dhatu, this is great Nibbāna, is a permanent freedom. That is the difference. When you attain it, you don't come back out of it. But Tadanga Nibbāna, Sammuti Nibbāna, Vikambana Nibbāna, you may attain it, but you get deprived of it. Right? You get out of it. Because you have a jhana, you may lose it. You observe a sila, you suppress certain defilements, you come into the state of non-arising of certain defilements, you break the sila, and the suffering may encounter. You may encounter the Sammuti Nibbāna of being a human being, being healthy, you can get deprived of this state. So if you go to the page number 1, right, number 2, 3, 4, it is not that the state is temporary. That is a very important thing. You temporarily go in and come out, right? So it is like this, for example. Now I will give you a simile about how this Samucceda Nibbāna, Sammuti Nibbāna and they are permanent states according to our understanding. Right, according to our understanding. So there are various types of Sammuti Nibbāna. For example, living without any difficulties, living without any fears, getting rid of the problems that are about to come, these are all called Sammuti Nibbāna. Right? Human life is a Sammuti Nibbāna. So, for example, think a person has done a crime. A person has done a crime. He has done a crime. So because of this crime, he went into the prison and ten days. So he went into the prison. So the king made the verdict that he should be executed. How to spell? Should be executed, right? Should be executed at the 10th day. Right? So now this person is spending days here. So as long as the verdict is there, he is not free according to our philosophy. Because the verdict is working. So he is bound to get executed. So now what happens? We are not in a Niyativada. Niyativada means after I explain this, someone can explain another way. I'll come to that point. Right? So now a person come into the state of prison. He was a free man. He was enjoying the freedom. What is the freedom? You can wander as you like. You can have a very free life without being tormented in the prison and all this. So he was in the prison for now he is spending in the prison for 4 days, for example, and he is about to get executed, beheaded at the 10th day. So luckily his relatives go to meet with the king and ask for pardon. So then the king, out of some reason, whatever reason, he gives the pardon and then he gets released. The person comes back again into the state of freedom. Right? And then he continues living. Now, he was about to get a shot on his neck and a great suffering on the 10th day. Right? If the verdict was not overturned, it would have happened. A Nibbāna person, a person who holds a doctrine called fixed doctrine, he would say it was destined that he would be freed. Right? Buddhism is not such a doctrine. Buddhism says he was now destined to be executed because of the good means or wise means of his relatives. Wise approach of the relatives. They were able to overturn the verdict. Maybe good means or wholesome or unwholesome, doesn't matter. They were able to overturn, so then he came into the freedom. So what is the reason he came into the freedom? His effort of his relatives. Right? They were able to convince the king for whatever reason. So always the cause and effect is there. Buddhism would never say it was destined that this person would become released. No. Then it becomes Nibbāna. Right? So according to us, according to the Buddhist teachings, now this person gets released on the 5th day morning, he got released. Now if you tell me, he was bound to get executed on the 10th day. So now he gets released. The relief, freedom from the execution, suffering of execution. To experience this freedom from suffering of execution, does he need to wait for another 10 days to experience it, or on that moment he experienced it? He experienced this freedom on the very moment he got freedom. He doesn't need wait for another 10 days to say, oh, now I get the freedom, that is the day I was going to be executed. No. From the very moment he got freed, he experienced the freedom. The thing what I want to explain is, the freedom was a state which existed independent of the person. So the person was in freedom, he was deprived of freedom because of his wrong means of killing another person, because of his bad means. He got into the suffering, got into the prison. If it was an unreasonable thing, maybe it's because of his past karma, whatever it is. But normally he did a killing, so because of his bad means, he came into the prison. So while he was experienced, on the 5th day, he came back into the freedom. So if I ask the question, during his 4 days in the prison, did the state of freedom existed or not? The state of freedom existed. It was experienced by everyone, every being. He also would have experienced it unless he had not killed the human. It was not that he was destined to be deprived of his freedom. Because of his wrong means, he was deprived of the freedom. So therefore, this freedom is not what I want to say is, when you attain the freedom, you can get out of it because you may stay temporarily, but it doesn't mean the state of freedom is impermanent. State of freedom is unconditioned permanent state. You may come into it, get out of it, but the great Nibbāna, which is also unconditioned state, you attain it, there's no way coming back. The reason is, these states are attained with the causes that could make you to get out of it. You still have the causes. You attain the Sammuti Nibbāna, Vikambana Nibbāna, Sadanga Nibbāna, while the causes are still present, which can take you out of that state. We attain a human life, but still we have the defilements, we have the karma which can take you into hell. That's why the Buddha says, even the Chakravarti Raja, universal monarch, even he experienced all the pleasures in the human world, monks, still he is with the causes that can take him to a full realm. It doesn't mean that he is sure to be born in one day, but he still has the causes within him. So there is a possibility that he may get out of the state. It is not a state is impermanent. It is because of the causes that can that would take you out of this state. But in the great Nibbana, you attain by removing these causes permanently. So therefore, there is no way that you get out of this state. So that is why it is called the great Nibbana, that you enter it, that's it, it's the end of the story. So this, what I want to say is, these unconditioned states, even though we say temporarily you attain it, doesn't mean the state itself is not temporal. The state is impermanent. They are permanent, unconditioned states like freedom, health, human realm, non-arising of defilements. So these non-arise from defilements by suppression, non-arise from defilement by abandoning. These are states, permanent states, which you attain time to time, and you get out of it because of the causes that makes you to get out of it. But the great Nibbana, which is also unconditioned state, you attain it by eliminating the causes that can make you get out of it. So therefore, there is no coming out of it. That is the difference. So therefore, in this list, the 2, 3, 4, 5 and 7 are unconditioned states. But 3, 2, 4, you may attain it and get out of it temporarily, but doesn't mean they are temporary. Right? I hope you got the point. Then Samucceda Nibbana and Nissarana Nibbana are the great Nibbana. There are two aspects of the great Nibbana. So when you attain this great Nibbana, it's not that you get the kilesas or the suffering again. Patipassadi Nibbana is a special case, the Arahatta Palachitta. It is called Nibbana because you get this Palachitta by after all the defilements have been eradicated. Right? So this is the point that I want to emphasize, and this is the great Nibbana is the goal, as Venerable Mantaniputta has mentioned. Yeah, so Mante has mentioned the sutta that Buddha mentioned. I say about two states, Dukkhancha Panyapemi, Dukkha Samudyancha, that is Dukkha Nirodhancha Panchapemi. That is which sutta? Alagadupama Sutta. I mentioned there are two states, suffering and dukkha and dukkha nirodha. Right? So yeah. Yeah, this will be the lecture about Nibbana. So I think I mentioned all the points. So what we want to say, what I want to conclude is, so before we attain the great Nibbana, we should be able to attain the other unconditioned states. That we should be able to maintain a Sammuti Nibbana, that is very important, regarding your health, regarding your day-to-day lives and so forth, and also get rid of problems that may cause, especially the monk rules. Most of the rules were made for monks, especially to get rid of this, attain to this Sammuti Nibbana, which makes you to be free from lots of troubles, lots of problems, physical and mental troubles. Tadanga Nibbana and Vikammana Nibbana are always spiritual. Sammuti Nibbana can be attained by any way, but always it is admirable to attain with proper means. Then admonished to attain with proper means. Then Tadanga Nibbana and Vikammana Nibbana are spiritual, is by suppressing or abandoning the defilements in our mind. So final liberation, final goal is Samucceda Nibbana and Nissarana Nibbana. So before we attain that, we have to attain these states of Sammuti Nibbana and Tadanga Vikammana Nibbana. When you practice Vipassana, you attain the Tadanga Nibbana. When you observe the Sila, you attain Tadanga Nibbana. When you develop the Samadhi and attain Jhanas, you attain the Vikammana Nibbana. By attaining Maggapala, you attain the Samucceda Nibbana and Nissarana Nibbana. So when you attain the Arahantship, when the Arahatta Phala appears in your mind, arises in your mind, that is considered as the Patipassadi Nibbana. So these are the lectures that I would give about Nibbana. So if I summarize, we talked about 7 types of Nibbana: Micchaditthika Nibbana, Sammuti Nibbana, Tadanga, Vikammana, Samucceda, Patipassadiya, Nissarana also mentioned about the two types of happiness. Vedaita Sukha and Avedaita Sukha. Vedaita Sukha is the Sukha Vedana. Avedaita Sukha is a state that is attained by suppressing the causes for suffering. And when you are in that state, when your mind and body is in that state, whether you consider about it or whether you think about it or not, the mind and body is in that state. That is the point that I want to emphasize. Yes, if you have any questions regarding one or two questions, the time has passed. Yeah. Yes. That should be mentioned under Samucceda Nibbana, because Nirodha Samapatti is attained by Anagami and Arahants only, right? So they have already attained the Samucceda Nibbana. So what they attain in the Nirodha Samapatti is their Samucceda Nibbana. Even though they are free from defilement, still they have the suffering of aggregates, right? So these aggregates, mental aggregates, are removed temporary. So therefore, it is a higher state of Samucceda Nibbana. Because even though a person is freed from defilements, but still he has the suffering of the mind. Mind is still working.
This freedom is temporary.
No, it's like still the freedom is the, how to say, the we don't distinguish it. We don't distinguish. Like for example, when how to say, the person has already eradicated the defilements, right? So his mind is freed from the defilements, right? So even while he is living, his freedom is there. So what is happening here is he is suppressing the Vedana and Sanya for a certain period. So it is the same Samucceda. His freedom from liberation is what we are talking.
I'm not referring to defilement. I'm just referring to.
I'm not referring to the Vedana and Sanya. I'm referring to the defilements.
But when referring to the Vedana Sanya, this is temporary.
They don't refer to only to Vedana Sanya here. They only refer to the Kilesas. And Khandas.
Is Khanda forever, but
Khandas also.
But for Khanda is temporary.
No, because Khandas means when you say Khanda from this life onwards, they have been removed. So when you suppress it for a certain while, so still we consider it as connected with that.
No, I mean for example, within these 7 days attainment, this Nama Rupa, which should arise.
Nama only, okay, right?
I think this is just temporary for 7 days. We should not mix with the defilement. He can't forever.
That is not thus explained in the sutta. That's why it is explained as the Great Nibbana. It is connected with that Nibbana. That's why I removed it. I also had the same idea as you said, but that's why I removed it, because they say it is the Venerable Ananda said in the sutta, that is the Nipparyaya Nibbana. So our tradition explains it as the Samucceda Nibbana. We don't go into that level because it's found in the sutta itself. That is a way of explaining. I understand what you say. It's like
there is no good reason.
It's not good reason, mean that is how it is given in the sutta. So we have to understand that is the way they explain it. You can say it's a temporal suppression, right? But when the fundamental is given as the Samucceda Nibbana, we would present it in that way. Understand what you say. I'm not denying what you say, but what I want to say is that is how it is explained in the sutta, a direct sutta, I'm saying. Okay, so we'll
Can you explain why this five belong to Asana?
Huh? That's why I was explaining.
Among 7 Nibbana, there are 5 belong to Asana.
Yeah.
Only one is Sankara.
Yeah, so that's why I said like this freedom can be attained even though we like the person who attained the freedom, right? Freedom from these sufferings. So likewise, the freedom of this our freedom from defilements also can be attained. So it's matter of fact that we don't attain the Vikammana Nibbana because we don't practice the jhana.
Here, Asana, how to translate?
Not conditioned. It's unconditioned. Yeah. It is there in the world always. Not in the world, there it is found in. It is found always. So we attain the jhana, we come into the Vikambana Nibbana, right? So we lost the jhana, we come out of that Vikambana Nibbana. So even the Vikambana Nibbana is still found. That is why we could attain it, right? So as we don't develop our jhana and suppress our defilements, so our mind doesn't attain it. So that's why these states are permanently found in the world. This freedom from suffering, freedom from these things.
If so, Patipassati Nibbana.
It is just a term. It's just a term used in the literature. It is just how it is mentioned. So why it is called Nibbana? Because it arises after eradication of all defilements. So it's just a terminology used for it. It is not a condition, unconditioned. It's just a term given for unconditioned.
In this case, no, it is conditioned.
Yeah, it's Palachitta. It's just a name given for Arahata Pala.
Conditioned.
Yeah.
In this case, what is difference between Magga and Pala? Between Magga and the first Pala?
Magga is cutting off the defilements. Palachitta is attained.
No means this.
What do you mean? It's just a way of saying, sir. It's like it's not a. It is being termed as so. Arahata Pala is termed as Nibbana. That's how we have to take it.
If so, Nibbana is unconditioned.
No, it's just a term. Don't take Nibbana is only the Nibbana we believe. Right? The fundamental is the term Nibbana has been used to referring to 7 things. That is the fundamental I want to bring. So you cannot say Nibbana is unconditioned. If you say you are referring to only 5 types of Nibbana. Right? And being a fundamental, the word Nibbana should not only be referred to the great Nibbana that we are referring to. Right?
Okay.
So you cannot say Nibbana is always unconditioned. There is a partial fundamental.
Yeah, I know Nibbana here, another usage.
Yeah.
I just mean
that's why I mentioned why Palachitta Arahata Palachitta is called Nibbana. It is attained when all the defilements are extinguished. When all the defilements come into Nibbana, Nibbana means extinguished, then the Palachitta arises. So this Palachitta is called Nibbana.
No, I don't mean the word Nibbana. I just mean this first Pala. Why it is?
It's because still there are some defilements left when you attain the last 3 palas, right? First 3 palas. So that's why I say fourth Palachitta is attained by eradication of all defilements.
No. I just focus on this Sankata and Asana.
Yeah.
What is difference? This one is called Sankata. The other 5 are called Asana.
The Arahata Pala is a Sankata, right?
Yeah.
So?
Sankata means conditioned.
Yeah.
Why Arahata Pala is conditioned?
Because it's conditioned by Magga Chitta, right?
If so, other things are also conditioned.
No, they are states. That's what I want to say. They are states. Freedom is not produced by the verdict. You attain the freedom because of your good means. You get rid of the freedom because of different reasons.
You mean whether attain or not, those states are always
exist. That's right. Yeah.
But if so, in the same way, this Arahata Pala.
No. Arahata Pala is something that arises. These Nibbanas doesn't arise in your mind. Tadanga Nibbana doesn't arise in your mind. Your mind attains the Tadanga Nibbana. That is mean by suppressing the defilements, your mind attains this. It is not that Tadanga Nibbana is arising in your mind. You cannot point out Chitta of Tadanga. Tadanga Nibbana is not the jhana. Vikambana Nibbana is not the jhana.
If we say Pana does not arise, if you say Pana arise,
yeah.
Not the state you attain. If so, in the same way, Magga also. Magga arises.
That's why I say Magga Chitta is eradicating the defilements, right? So Palachitta arises after the eradication. So Magga is not given the name Nibbana because it's the moment of eradication. After eradication, when all the kilesas are extinguished, Pala arises. So only the Arahata Pala get this name. Right? This is just a terminology used in our literature. Okay. So yeah. Any questions? Right. Okay. We'll conclude the class. Actually, I just want to say something. It was a very nice series of lectures. I really enjoyed it. And it was like, give me a few minutes. Sorry, I'm taking a lot of time. The final class. Sorry for that. So it's like there was a sutta. Like I just want to say in these lectures, there was a sutta that one Brahma who was spending in long time in Brahma world. After spending many years in many Brahmas, he forgot his birth, his lifespan. So likewise, when I was doing lots of classes, I forgot the number of the lectures actually, right? So in the beginning, in the second, always I used to say which lecture I was giving. Now I'm not sure how many lectures I have given. I started the course as 50 lectures, but I think it has surpassed the 50 lectures. So I hope you got some idea. The purpose of these lectures were to show that the Theravadian doctrine is based on certain fundamentals, and that's what I found in my thesis. So, and they are scattered, not in one place. The commentators' duty was not to address the fundamentals and bring them into one position. Their duty was to explain the canon as it is found. So I felt when we read the doctrine partially, we come into certain conclusions. And later it happened to me, when you read there's different fundamental, a different portion, and after many years you have to change the knowledge that you have already developed in your mind, because with the whatever we have in our hand, we develop a picture. That is our mind, nature of our human mind. So the thing is, this can be avoided only by gathering the fundamentals in one place and studying them systematically. Then we can develop a proper picture without parts are missing, right? So this was the main purpose of this doctrine. And I also want to explain, the commentators has not messed up. That is another idea sometimes we have. Commentators have messed up the teachings. No. They are very profound, erudite scholars of this tradition. They have studied it meticulously. So it was, you find that you explain certain places, another place they find the introduce a different fundamental, and what they explain here doesn't contradict with the other places. So they knew the fundamentals thoroughly. So when we want to analyze the commentaries and the suttas and the sub-commentaries, the main thing is that we have to study the fundamental first. And another point is, this is just the gathering of fundamentals. How we explain the canon and how we explain the doctrine is another thing. It's called, I term it as discourse community constraints, the methodology. How we explain. There are ways, grammatical ways, literature ways, the Dhamma ways of explaining. These are the facts, religious community facts. So these constraints are found in Burma especially. They are, even at this moment, they are preserved in Burma, which came to here from Sri Lanka in ancient times, from the commentary and sub-commentary literature. Unfortunately, in Sri Lanka, we have lost that tradition. But in Burma, due to being a continuous tradition, a living tradition for 1,000 years, they still have these preserved constraints. So when we, for example, when we visit some monasteries, they asked us, these traditions came from Sri Lanka, do you study it in Sri Lanka these days? We are not aware of that, because our living tradition was cut off in certain eras. So the thing is, in Burma, for example, we have these constraints, but for example, when I discussed with my Abhivansa friend, I asked them whether the fundamentals are gathered. That problem still prevails in the Theravada tradition. There are not many books which have gathered all the fundamentals in one place. Abhidhammatta Sangha is one book, but it has gathered a huge amount of fundamentals, but not all. There are lots of fundamentals that are not being gathered. So my purpose of this course was to introduce you to that there are lots of fundamentals. I think you found that when we discuss about Kamma, we came into more than 200 fundamentals, and it is not finished actually. There are lots of more fundamentals to be introduced regarding Kamma. So this is how our literature is built up. So if you want to have good academic studies about the Theravada tradition, I'm calling about a tradition, I'm not talking about the entire Buddhism. The Theravada tradition, you have to study the fundamentals thoroughly. Then we can get a good picture about it. Then another thing is, after study these fundamentals, when you bring into the practical aspect, of your daily practice, it is a different case. That is vipassana and day-to-day life putting in. So my duty of this course was to introduce you academic field, academic points. It was not in giving the inspiration. Sometimes you may have got some inspirations because of this course, but my main was to give you an academic explanation on the Theravada doctrine. When I say the doctrine, canon, commentaries and sub-commentaries. So I hope you got a certain idea about this, and I think you are aware that lots of things to be studied in the Theravada tradition which are very useful. So I hope you got the urge to lead your studies further in order to get the knowledge more. So, and to conclude the lectures, and I always it was a nice course. I did work hard, I would admit that, and sometimes working till night. And I also want to emphasize my gratitude to my friends, especially to Devananda Bhante. Especially, he was my great benefactor throughout my monk life, and if not for him, I would not be able to do such a course, that's for sure. And I'll not be here if it not for him. Then another real gratitude to our Sangharatana Bhante because these all lectures are put into the YouTube, and I know Bhante Devananda and Sangharatana, they edit and all, they do it sometimes taking hours to recapture and do these editings. And also special thanks to Bhante Tilokananda for arranging things and properly organizing them and informing all the group and everything. And also special thanks to Bhante Siddhartha and Vijitananda Abhimansa, because whenever I need a certain reference, because I was doing some handouts I was doing till late night, sometimes 1, 2, I was sleeping 3 o'clock sometimes, finishing the handouts. So that when I want to have the reference, I just give them a call, and they were very helpful to just send me the reference which they are to find out. And also to Bhante Dhammajiva to supporting us always with in many ways. And yes, and also special thanks to, because this course was done with an invitation made by Syali Baddateri and Samaneri Sobananyani. So thanks for both of them, and special thanks to Syali Baddateri for doing all the printing and all the handouts very nicely on time, because I know even though it comes to you to hand, today's handout was sent at 12 p.m. to her. Right, but it comes at 1:30, right? So it has to be her own printer. She has to print, and I just do say the numbers, this to this, and I just send it. I don't know what is happening over there, so I send them very late. So thanks for her, and also special thanks today to Mr. Park. Because of him, I'll be able to do my lectures. Otherwise, I was in immense of pain, leg pain, and he's a acupuncturist, and I was really pleased with his treatment, so I could able to stand and give a lecture. So thank you all of you for attending. Some came even from out, especially Brother Jose and all the others, and thank you very much for attending. And if I made any mistake, please apologize, and hope you will be able to attain this great Nibbana as soon.